He's just basically trying to trip everybody up. So
Morning, everybody.
And I just messed up.
Yeah,
I think we have a few other people coming. We'll go ahead and get started.
Posted on
First, I wanted to say thank you to all of you for taking the time out and work on these recommendations that we're going to be making to City Council. I think it's incredibly valuable to have members of the community that are participating in making recommendations to council and the diverse perspectives that people have. And I think all of those combined together will make it something unique to Shelton and how we're going to address this problem, or how we're going to recommend to council that the problem is addressed. So tonight we have the Spotlight Shelton event, and that's going to start at 6 p.m.
Oh, sorry.
So the format of that, I will get up and introduce the event, welcome everybody to the event, talk about the format a little bit. You guys probably saw how the chairs were set up out front. So once the presentations are complete, our nonprofit partners will be at the table kind of right outside this door. The city council will be back here in the corner. Don't take any meaning from that. And the city staff and team will be over by the windows. So we want to make sure it's clearly defined where people can go to talk to various providers and get the answers that they want, the answers that they're looking for. This format, this format, I think, will give people a better opportunity to understand the recommendations that the task force makes, but also kind of what's happening within the city, because you can ask follow-up questions. So you can ask follow-up questions, and or people can ask follow-up questions of all of us to determine what direction we're going to go and give input on the recommendations. And that's really what this is all about. So with that, we'll have the presentations from each of our partners, Youth Connection, Crossroads, Community Lifeline, and a few other communities. 5 minutes each. Just talk about what the challenges are, the services that we provide, the challenges that you're facing, that type of thing. And then after that, we'll have our Parks and Recreation Director, Mark Ziegler, to talk about some of the impacts on public services and public facilities. Following that, we'll go to Jeff Snyder from Central Mason, and he'll talk about EMS impacts and calls, the call volume, that type of thing. And finally, well, not finally, last presentation from a department will be Captain Costad from the Shelton Police Department to talk about the impacts of their services and what they do. Some of the successes they've had and some of the challenges that they face, quite frankly. And then finally, I'll get back up and I'll talk about the recommendations that you're going to make today. Talk about the task force. Thank you all again publicly for participating in this. And talk about when the recommendations that this group makes is going to go to council, which I expect to happen in November. So that's kind of the format. After that, we'll all go to our tables and be available for questions from the public. What questions they have, kind of where we're going and why we're going there. The short-term recommendations that we'll make to council that will immediately address some of the problems, the intermediate ones, and then the longer-term ones that are going to cost some dollars. The other thing I want to talk about with people is funding. How are we going to pay for all this? You'll notice in the back of the recommendations memo that you got, about 2 weeks ago now, there's a discussion about how to pay for the things that we need to pay for in order to address the problem. So with that, what I thought we'd do today is we have all the memo and everything, so I don't want to go through all of that again, but I have each of the top line recommendations listed up here. And I wanted to have a little bit of discussion about each one, and then what we're looking for is consensus. So we'll highlight each one of the recommendations. People who think that that's a good recommendation, raise your hand. I'll count the number of votes, and then at the end, we'll look at what the top line recommendations are. And then I'll put that in the format for tonight that I'll have available for a handout when people come in the door. Okay? So, any discussion on the emergency encampment.
Can I interject just one thing here before we start that?
Yeah.
I feel that as a group, we've all had information provided to us, either directed by yourself or by an ask from somebody sitting on this board. The one thing that we've skipped over though, and we're not talking about the homeless, we're talking about the street situation that we have downtown, and these individuals that don't fit into the homeless mold per se. They choose to be on the street, they choose not to go to a shelter that requires certain rules or regulations and things like that. My wife and I have presented to City Council and yourself on several occasions, and we've had some conversations in here, but it's been very minimal. I happened to throw together some information on Everett, Auburn, Lakewood, Spokane, Aberdeen, that deals with the no lay-lie law, the shopping cart ordinances, and then panhandling. I've got them available if people want them. But as I have, and Colleen pointed this out, as I have came in and broadened my understanding and horizons, and I am behind a mitigation point, I am behind Quixote Village, I am behind, a lot of the homeless situations. But what I don't see is I don't see any conversations that we've had on what's affecting the core business people of downtown. And I would like to have that thrown on to here so that we can make that recommendation to City Council in some format. And it doesn't necessarily have to, as some people say, criminalize it. It can be a civil matter. And those individuals, if they end up with an infraction for violating and not being in compliance, then we absolutely have one of the best community service people that drives around in their van, and then those people can actually clean up the community that they helped mess up. So
that, I think, it's up to the group, but the time for recommendations that I could research and put into this memo was at our last meeting, and I was kind of surprised that you didn't have that on, to be honest with you. But in any case, one of our council members has asked for a work session, or a study session on the no-lie ordinance. And that will be going to a study session the same night your recommendations will. So that's, like I said, I was a little surprised that you didn't make the recommendation with all of these others, because I know you've been talking about that quite a bit, but it wasn't made, it didn't make it on the list. So, but in any event, that's going to happen regardless.
But isn't the homeless encampment part of that solution too?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
So-
we're missing a few, but at least, the emergency encampment does address.
So we could take this in on that as a,
Sergeant Lawson.
Nina, I understand where you're coming from. With some of these recommendations, right now, we don't have any teeth to do anything. Even if we had a no lie, no sit law on the books, there's not really much that we could do without setting the city up and business owners for a lawsuit for somebody.
well,
With adding some of these, we can now move somebody, we can start moving people out. There's already municipal codes where you can't block a sidewalk. Right now, if somebody's sleeping, we can't force them and make that a criminal issue that's on there. But once we have places that they can go and they actively refuse to move, then we can take actions
Yes.
on it. So a lot of this, and again, I understand where you're coming from, the panhandling, City of Shelton has an aggressive panhandling municipal code. ACLU says if somebody wants to panhandle and just put a sign up, we can't do anything
it's
because
free speech, right?
it's free speech. So we can't force somebody to not panhandle. So Everett, Auburn have these, is currently being looked at by different agencies for the freedom of speech, which kind of throws their laws into suspect. I agree, having somebody stand up, we have a move, like, hey, you can't be in the street, you can't block the sidewalk. There's things that we can do that and we have been doing, that we can't force them and make that a crime because then we're infringing on their freedom of speech.
We can make them move if they're blocking the sight distance, for traffic dangerous, that kind of stuff, or if there's not 4 feet of clear sidewalk for ADA access. things like that we can address, but just them being there, that's a different story.
I have a question. You didn't put a cost estimate in the emergency encampment part. Because wasn't it under, I was under the,
Did I miss that?
yeah, I don't see unless I'm misunderstanding what you're giving me.
I'm not.
Yeah,
Mine says shelter
I think
beds,
that
but
this
mine's
is all
actually permanent
review.
supportive housing beds.
Yeah.
Just increase existing shelter beds.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we have to take in consideration with the emergency encampment was that we have to have staff there.
That's what I'm saying, so people-
And somebody has to take that on, and so it's a whole new funding that, to make that happen.
Right, so the way that I envision the mitigation site initially is porta potties, those types of things. There's some that some of you may have seen at concerts and things like that, or a trailer. Something like that, along with a security guard in the evening, not necessarily in the daytime.
But didn't we have, I'm going by what the presentations and things that we had going on. I thought that part of it was having staff, someone there to, so if we're really looking at that emergency encampment, the intent is that we want to try to get them services too. So we're not just shipping them there and going, bummer, you get to live here, this is your space.
And what I was envisioning on that part is help from our nonprofit partners.
Okay.
Just to be there during the day to keep those statistics, because we're going to want to track those. But overnight would be security personnel.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
But that's still a cost, so I'm kind of
Oh, yeah.
curious to what that is.
Yeah.
Because if I go by those numbers in that presentation, what did they say, like, it was a lot of money per,
That's building infrastructure and moving it, you're talking.
prior to
there's
the
a lot.
infrastructure. No, it was prior to the, remember he gave a
No,
quote
that was
prior to
moving,
that?
the $100 a bed was contingent, the infrastructure being moved to there. And then as the bed number went up, that $100 went down,
Right.
once infrastructure was in.
So prior to infrastructure,
That I don't know that
it's
discussed.
that,
or put
it sounds
dollar
as if it
amount.
was $100 a day per camper that goes in this encampment.
I don't know that one.
I will go back and review that again, but I think that the initial cost was $120 per night, but that was because of the cost of extending water and sewer and everything else.
Per camper or just?
Per bed.
Per bed, so.
But
okay.
that's also a facility, it's not a mitigation site.
I got you.
It's not a permanent structure.
But I think our goal is to start with the
Eventually.
mitigation site and continue to grow and move as we get funding.
Yep.
So a couple things when we're talking about encampment that I think words matter in how we talk about this. And I think when we say, oh, an encampment for the homeless,
No, it needs to be mitigation site.
or yeah,
That
encampment's
sounds
not a
so
good
much
word,
better
mitigation site, but also, this is for the chronically homeless, really for the most part. And remember, you had kind of defined the people, and we're talking about the group that through either mental health, addiction, have kind of decided that they don't want to live by society's rules, and so a place for them, a safe place for them to be. The other thing is, I think we need to come up with another name. Let's not call it the old C Street dump, C Street Annex.
Right.
I think those words, as we talk publicly, are gonna be very, very important, at whatever we need to call it.
City-owned property.
City-owned property, that works. Right outside downtown, or outside of downtown, not right.
So, well, there's a couple other sites. I looked at 5 sites yesterday to start thinking about where this might go, assuming that this is going to be a recommendation that this group makes. And if it's not, then that's fine. But looked at 5 different sites, so there are options.
Will you share those?
So one of them was, it's all city-owned property, so the C Street property over on the other side of 101. Another one was property across from the yacht club, but that is pretty much inaccessible and would be difficult to get to, and it's pretty steep. Another one was a piece of property north of Railroad, right when you're going out of town. Also pretty steep, except there is about 1.25 acres up on the top.
So you're talking like B Street,
Yeah, but not quite up there. It's mostly hillside. It's 8 acres, a little over 8 acres, but only about an acre and a quarter is usable.
Is access not for Franklin or something?
Well, and that's another, inaccessibility is another issue there. The fourth one was property up near the high school, which also is problematic. And the fifth one was city-owned property right on, close to Builders First Source.
Okay, so C Street, sounds good.
Well, yeah, but the C Street property also has some issues with it, right? We'll have to work with Transit Authority to get transit stops there, otherwise you're gonna.
See, and they get more money for adding more stops, so that's good for
Well,
them.
but I have to talk to them.
Yeah.
I can't say that. Add a transit stop there, there is no water and sewer over there. Plus, we have to work with WashDOT because it crosses over 101. So those are all potential barriers to that site. But those are the ones, we're only looking at city-owned property because these temporary encampments by the ordinance that council passed must be hosted by a community organization, which we are, right? There are others, religious institutions, that kind of stuff. Like Everett, that Dean mentioned, they have rotating camps. So they have an ordinance very similar to ours, and 3 churches share. Right. It's here for 6 months. They get a 6-month extension, it goes to the next church. 6 months, and the next, and it just rotates.
When we're pitching the C Street property, there's been years of testing there. The parts that are a problem are gonna be covered and fenced off for the rest of our natural lives. The rest of the acres are clean. They've been tested and, somebody's gonna make sure that we're not putting homeless in a dump.
Well, and that's why we need to be careful about
Yes.
how we,
That
Yeah.
it is being fenced off, covered up, and monitored for the rest of our natural lives. The rest of the property is perfectly clean. It's been tested.
Well, it's probably tested more than what your backyard is, so it's probably cleaner than your backyard to begin with.
Yeah.
You guys would be surprised, that stuff's all over town.
So, it's not necessarily a dump. The dump is a couple acres, and there's 7 others?
9.
So I looked yesterday, and the property is, I thought it was 13, it's actually 16. And the area that has to be covered and fenced is 4.
Yeah,
So
so,
that leaves us
all
like
acres.
12 that we can.
So in all fairness, I didn't even know it was a dump out there.
yeah.
So there's a lot of people in the population that aren't even gonna know that.
It was from the 20s, and it was
Exactly.
supposed to be closed in the 50s, and
Right.
people
Well,
kept using it until the 80s.
even so, it's less than half of the parcel, so there's plenty of room where it's not,
Yeah.
right, where there's no impact at all.
And trust me, if there was anything else that called, you would.
Getting away from the location of it,
Yes.
because that's what council will talk about, where is best, because we talked about, I think, in the first meeting, no matter where we put this, somebody's gonna get upset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So disregarding the location, when we look at emergency encampment from the group or a mitigation site, who would feel comfortable making that recommendation to council that we pursue that?
well,
I think we're just gonna talk about, yeah.
You mean,
Is there more discussion?
I recommend that we recommend an emergency.
Okay.
Can we change it to mitigation site encampment?
We can, you're gonna make me type in front of everybody?
I am, but encampment has a negative.
Sound it out real loud,
Words
Jeff.
matter.
Mitigation site does not sound like, The camera sounds like a prison. yeah.
It does. And we heard from Susan, it just, the doing it gives folks some heartache, which I get, so.
Here we go.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
but this is the option to
We're just voting.
remove them from the park.
this is, we're gonna vote on all of these. The top 8 vote getters are what's gonna be the recommendations. And then I'm gonna break it down based on short, intermediate, long term, based on how much money it's gonna cost.
Okay, so what the emergency mitigation site gets us is the ability for police to say, hey, you need to move along, and they say, I don't wanna, and they say, well, if you need to move, so we have a place, and if they say, I don't wanna, then they get held off to jail.
Or
Or
they get removed.
Or
they get
leave.
removed.
That's right.
Okay, so I vote yes.
Sure.
1, 2, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay. I didn't think this through.
you want a printed copy?
No, it's not. I want it up here so everybody can see it.
Oh, I can't.
You need to zoom it in, Jeff.
That's a 7.
All right, increase the font.
So the next one, the support for the current shelter options, and I take Colleen's point, hers is permanent transitional housing,
Permanent supportive
or
housing.
permanent supportive housing, but I wanted to have those numbers in there. That doesn't mean that these nonprofit groups are asking for all of the money to do this. That is, it's something that we could write letters of support for when they go for grants, that type of thing, right? So is there any discussion about the support for shelter beds up to 30 among the group?
We're looking at possibly adding and extending water, sewer, personnel. If we add, because in the numbers you have a 35-bed emergency shelter for 2023, would we need that mitigation site if we had support for something local? We've got law enforcement downtown, 2 to 3 officers at night. They'd have the overnight staff there. Youth Connect is working on some emergency beds. So just wondering, do we shoot for stuff that's already in place versus the mitigation site where we have to go through, it's the old dump, and we're just throwing homeless in the dump, or, and putting water and sewer out there, or have something close by where we've got law enforcement less than a couple minutes away.
So in my view, and this is only my view, but we need to have enough beds to address the homeless population at the last point in time count. And the last point in time count was 254.
You're never gonna get that.
Not at one of the shelters, I don't think. I mean, not in the current building, in the current footprint, right?
But what I had mentioned before is that, you know, we've run into some struggles trying to get approved for our capacity increase to 54 in our current location, because it is bordering businesses and residential areas and those types of things. So if Community Lifeline, we own our building, and so if we were to relocate, we could sell our building and apply that to a permanent or more permanent, like pallet shelter design, or something like that, that I think would be beneficial for the entire community, because we're not right in the heart of downtown, where we're disturbing businesses and people's homes, but we still have a facility that is able to meet the need of the community.
And could that pallet, what do you call it?
Portable, they call them pallet
Okay.
shelters.
Portable, is that something that could potentially happen on the C Street property down the road? If
Potentially.
As
potentially?
it develops,
As
is
it
it
develops.
funding for it?
We have 12 acres. Each
Yeah.
one of the smaller pallet shelters, it's a company out of Everett that makes those. The smaller ones, I believe, are 7,000 the last I looked, and they house 2.
When I had a meeting with the pallet shelter group, and for 30 units that have 2 beds each of them, so it would be a total of 60 people. For all of the units and the bathroom facilities and the things that need to come with that, it was just under $500,000 and the good thing about the pallet shelters is that they build them up, each one up in like an hour, and they come with heat and some places, depending on climate, AC, fire extinguishers, all those different things.
Well, I personally would have a hard time voting no on a statement to support current shelter options. I mean, it's not, you know, could be money, could be letters, but I mean, it'd be silly to not support our current options.
So my pushback on part of that is going back to what Dean said, and this is me, not that I'm against you, just don't take it that way, okay? No. But our chronic homeless young people, they don't even go to Community Lifeline. They may go in the door to get their food, but they don't want to stay in a building. They really struggle. So if I had to choose, just looking at those 2 options, if that's the population we're dealing
Yes.
with, is that just that 10% then increasing the beds aren't gonna make a difference, because they're not gonna go in.
Absolutely.
I would
Well-
like to just kind of clarify that there are a handful of people that choose not to participate in shelter, but the majority of people, even in the chronically homeless population, absolutely have relationships with Community Lifeline and do come and stay. There are times that if there's a safety issue, or if somebody is not willing to leave drugs and alcohol off the property, that we have to address that. But when we say that, you know, the people who choose not to participate in shelter, we're not talking about a large number of people. Most people don't want to be outside, and I can promise you, in the wintertime, that is certainly true.
So the other, and this is anecdotal, I mean, I've just read stories about it and heard from people. The reason a lot of times people do not want to participate in shelter, if there is one, is because it's kind of like a dormitory setting, and they don't feel safe. So when you get these two-bed or two-person pallet shelters, that kind of takes away a lot of those concerns, right?
And that is what I was talking about, the population that, I'm not talking about the general.
Yeah.
We have 3 young people right now that will not even go in our shelter house,
Yeah.
because they cannot be, they just,
There are people, I mean, and I
They
know a
acknowledge
couple veterans who, you know, they struggle with PTSD from their war experiences, and they don't like to be indoors either, so.
But if we're talking about a population of 256, right, that's kind of what the number that we've been hearing. If you talk about 10%, how many people is that? You're talking 30 people. If you're a business owner downtown, 30 people not being housed, causing issues, is an issue. It's a huge issue. It may seem like a small percentage, but the percentage is, you're not talking about the actual, you know, then the police officers are responding to 90% of those calls. But on a side deal here, Jeff, I know that Holly had sent this email to you as well, and, you know, she supports the minimal emergency mitigation site, so I don't know if you want to throw that number from 7 to 8.
I will, next time I get up. Go ahead.
I think it's really important that as we talk about the 10% or the 30 or the 12 or whatever it is, that's why we're here. We're addressing that problem. We're going to have a mitigation site. They don't leave Post Office Park, then eventually they'll go to jail. And we are working on some jail issues as we speak, you know, that are very promising. So that was this group is about. It's not about, you know, just fixing the ones that want to be fixed. It's about making the ones that don't want to be fixed accountable for their actions. So mitigation site, they won't go, then eventually they're going to go to jail.
I just wanted to remind everybody too, I think I mentioned at the last city council meeting, it's approximately $35,000 a person per year to leave people unhoused. That's from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So anytime someone starts pushing back on the numbers we're talking about for shelter beds or for the mitigation site, I really hope we keep bringing them back to those national statistics that are out of our control to bring, and they are actual factual data about the cost for police, emergency room. I mean, if you have to, I guess you could survey your local police department and your Mason County and say, what is the cost, how many homeless people are, but it's easier just to grab a data point that's already available to everyone to see. Because the numbers are large, but 9 million based on the 254 homeless we have right now times 35,000, 9 million a year is not even a brushstroke of what these costs are for these mitigation sites and such. So it is really just reducing the cost you're already spending. That's what you're trying about the amount of money that's being wasted on this, because it is. Put it towards something you actually will see data for and you'll see some success with. And I think that's just the way you have to sort of approach it.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I think, I agree with that. That's a great point to grab onto as something we're talking to the community members. To do these types of things, we will actually spend less than we would otherwise, than we currently do. It's just the cost of taking, you know, for emergency room visits, all of those types of things. But as far as support for the current shelter options, when we're talking about the current ones that we have, plus what they may turn into in the future, these would be, again, writing letters of support for grant opportunities that these groups are pursuing. Maybe some staff time for help to help these groups put together their grant packages, those types of things. Is that something that the group is willing to recommend? I'm slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All right, so the embedded designated crisis responders.
Oh, am I supposed to vote?
Hold on.
No? Both hands?
Unanimous almost?
All right.
I think I'm
All
gonna
the
vote.
DCR
See my first. I heard
That was easy.
That takes care of the 10%, so that's why that one's so important.
I don't think you can have an emergency mitigation site without having a DCR responder. I think they have to go, well, all three of the ones we've talked about all go hand in hand.
So I have to read it over one last time, but this afternoon I'm going to be submitting a grant to the Washington State Healthcare Authority for the alternative response team. It's a limited term grant, right? I think it's 2 years, if I remember right. But I've got it all written out. I just want to read it over one more time before I submit it this afternoon. But that funding could go to, if we're lucky enough to receive the grant, that funding could go to this program. But again, it's only 2 year. So we
Okay.
would
Do you think they have a turnaround on that grant? Like how,
November is
when they'll let you know?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty quick turnaround. Is it rural focused? Do you think we have a, potential to get it because of the location?
I think we have a pretty good shot at getting it, but until they notify, until they tell us, we don't know for sure. It's definitely, right, it's,
What is the dollar amount?
so you asked for what you think you need. We have $2 million in total throughout the entire state. They're all, they're pilot programs is basically what it is, to see if this is something that will work and they can deploy it more widely.
Do we need letters of support or anything?
They do ask for partnership letters, and we have some of those. But if you want to send me one over, then I can delay until, I think the deadline is Saturday, the 15th is the deadline. So if you want to send me a letter of support, please do so. It's the alternative.
Alternative response team.
Yes, thank you. It's the alternative response team through the Washington State Healthcare Authority, just as the agency.
Well, the excitement of it being as a pilot program is that if we show good response, then the chances are likely, not guaranteed, that it would then make a change in the House bill.
I agree, yes.
Just a notable mention that Jamie, one of our county navigators, and Lawson and Officer Pickens finally, after the determination, got a gentleman out of the clock tower and the help that he needed, and he probably will not be back. And it took months, because when they call a GCR down, they sometimes are 3 hours later and the person's fine. And so,
They're not there anymore.
or they're not there, and so they're not, this time they actually came and witnessed 2 incidents where the person almost caused 2 car accidents and injured himself or somebody else, and he is now, I believe, still in St. Pete's and getting a lot of help he deserves and probably will not be back, and that's their determination, like following him around.
And that's the biggest thing, right, is our closest DCR is Lacey. They are not close.
And Jamie.
Yeah,
What?
I don't think Jamie, you're not a DCR, are you?
No, she just gets to follow them around till the DCR show up.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, why doesn't Jamie go back to school and become a DSR?
No, and they're changing criteria, I'll be able to do it soon enough.
So, yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at, and I'm hopeful we'll get the grant.
Pay for my schooling.
We'll see. Yeah, I'll be sure to let this group know if we receive it.
Okay.
or receive partial, I'll take partial.
Can I add one thing to that really quick?
Yeah.
When I was involved with some of those meetings, whoever originally had told me about that grant, they said one of the biggest things that will almost guarantee you get it is if you include both tribes.
Right.
Is being a part of, being able to utilize those DCRs, because they would be able to utilize those DCRs if it was part of the sheriff's office
Yeah.
too, so.
I have reached out. What's next here? Lockers for the homeless community to store belongings. I think
Oh, sorry.
based on.
She just wants to get stuff done.
Right, I think that from the research that I've done on that, that will solve a lot of the shopping cart issues that we see around town.
So what's the, what if, remember we were talking about the what if it doesn't, what's this next? Because I'm having a hard time seeing through that one.
Yeah, so
Can-
the next step in my mind would be to adopt something like federally adopted with the shopping cart ordinance. But whenever you're designing policy or you're writing new law, you always want to write it with an incentive on one side to do what you want people to do, and then the stick on the other that says this is what will happen if you don't. So good things happen if you do this, bad things happen if you don't. It's not just status quo.
So I deal with Safeway, a fair little amount, and they, I don't know, a few months back got rid of their security personnel. They used to stop people from leaving the lot with their carts.
Right.
And so since he's been gone,
Mhm.
you're seeing just an exponential jump in carts.
Yeah, and it's evidence-based from the research that I've done is that once the storage lockers are available, that cuts down on a lot of it because people don't have to tow their belongings around everywhere they go.
Okay.
They know they're secure.
Tanya hit me with the medical, so people have a place to store their medications that are greatly required
Yeah.
and all of those things. So she got me half on board.
Can you cite it, or can you let us know a municipality that has the lockers?
Yeah, Portland does, Everett does.
Portland's probably one we don't want to mention because I don't know that they're having any success with anything, but.
But you said Portland and Everett?
Portland, Everett, what was the other one? Somewhere in the North Puget Sound, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can find that. Yeah, and they seem to work, they're actually in use, and it doesn't address the homelessness problem.
Yeah, but if it stops the carts, being able to move massive amounts of trash around is an issue for downtown.
Yeah, and there's stuff that the programs that I looked up, you can't store food in there, right? Those types of things. So you're not dealing with that or with rot or anything like that.
Okay.
So what is there's a cost associated with it, right? So we'd have to find a building, we would have to install the lockers, we would have to staff it because you have to have somebody there to let people in and access to their things, not 24 hours a day, but certain points during the day. So there is a cost associated with it, and I think I put that in, I missed that one. But what does the group think about that as a recommendation to the city council?
Is anybody, by the way, willing to, because I'm sure they must have some cost estimate of how much it's costing them to lose those carts, and if they were to help invest in something like this?
Safeway doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
You know,
And neither
they
is
they
Walmart.
lost 2 of their motorized carts at the tune of $3,500 a piece, and they just don't care. They just up the price of the groceries a little tiny bit.
Yeah, but if I go to them after this recommendation of the city council, go to Safeway, go to Walmart, go to Freddy's, and say, hey, we think this will help solve a problem for you and it will help the community. There's
They have
opportunities
community
there.
grants too, I think that we could probably, they all do.
They all do.
Reduce their costs.
Well, they need to be a good steward to the community, and that's what you would need to push, because Blair and I have pushed on these different stores, and it's fallen on deaf ears. I mean, I collected,
one for me. They're
I
not
collected
even
25 of them,
Yeah.
and they didn't even miss them.
They went and bought 50 more. So
Well,
they
no,
did.
because when Safeway buys shopping carts, they buy 1 million and it costs them about $2 a piece,
Yeah.
right? So,
So I just need to say as a business person, if somebody came to me and said, hey, these people are doing these things wrong, we have a solution, we help pay for it, so you don't keep losing money, and you give us money,
Yep.
that would not go over well with me, just saying, as a business owner.
no,
So you want me to pay so people stop stealing my shit? Not gonna happen, so just just from a business owner's perspective.
No, the message, if this is a recommendation, if it's something council wants to pursue, the message would be a little bit different.
Okay. Just want to be,
So can I, before we keep voting, because, so are we just giving the top, I mean, obviously we can vote and decide, yeah, I like this, yes. How many are we trying to vote on? Are we trying to narrow it down to one?
No, so we said from the start, as part of this group, we're trying to find between 6 to 8 recommendations that we
Okay.
will make to council.
And then the council will narrow it down from that.
I don't think, well, it depends. I mean, the council can accept all of them, the council can accept 5 of them, the council, that's kind of their legislative decision-making authority to do that.
And do we have any idea where a building or a property or whatever would house these?
No, because what we're talking about now and what we were talking about a little bit with the location of the mitigation site is scope creep. You guys make recommendations, we think we should do this, and then it's up to me and the rest of the city team here to determine the appropriate locations where those would be.
So I have,
That's not part of this.
so we're the what, you're the how.
Yes.
so I'm gonna say that we in the Youth Connection, and I know we're dealing with a different population, so let me say that. I have 25 locker spaces, the big secured black and yellow totes. They're locked, they're in a locked space, they can access them 5 days a week. We have used 4 of them. Okay, so I'm not trying to say negativeness, I think it's a great idea. The concept is an amazing idea.
You're providing real life feedback.
But, because I think of, we created it in the idea, Tanya, if I asked you to let me secure your purse, I better damn well make sure that purse is secure, right? And that you only have access to it. And that's with a concept that we did in these lockers in our building. And we average about 4 in use at any given time.
Can the
Now-
lockers be at the mitigation site, so it kind of like helps people be,
Right.
you know what I mean?
It certainly could, I mean, what Melanie said was right. You guys are the what? Let me do the how.
I think if it was in connection with the
Well-
mitigation site, it might be a good idea, but.
Right, because if the lockers are at the mitigation site, even if somebody is kind of like not so sure about staying there right away, they at least can go utilize the lockers, build relationships with people, and, you know, end up hopefully staying there.
You probably cut down some of your issues with people stealing stuff from each other at your mitigation site
Right,
as well.
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
It feels like what we're just trying to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're like your board, we're giving you ideas, and then it's up to you to come up with a strategic direction that we're gonna take to accomplish these goals with dates. Am I
Yes.
correct in that? And then we will get updates to the city every 6 months?
It's kind of like that, except that my actual board is the city council.
Right.
So what I'm looking to you all, and because you represent different perspectives, is the ideas and the recommendations that you want to make to the council.
Right.
And by the
Who's
board.
gonna execute it.
Right. And then I get to figure out how to do it and how to pay for it.
Well, I would recommend this only if it was connected with the mitigation site, because 2 reasons. First of all, you got 2 full-time employees who are gonna be at the mitigation site too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So it's kind of a dual purpose.
Okay. Jim?
She stole part of the words out of my mouth too, but I just wanted to add, I noticed that a lot of our individuals that do have shopping carts downtown are our most severely mentally ill. And if we had a DCR out and able to detain those individuals, you're probably not gonna have those ones walking around with a shopping cart anymore anyways. So if the lockers were just to like solve the shopping cart problem, I don't think we need it. But if it's connected with like the mitigation site or, you know, directly with Community Lifeline for people to be able to store their stuff, then 100% it would be good.
It
But
seems-
I would not want stuff stored out of those shopping carts. It will smell, I don't know if you guys have ever got that close to somebody in one of those shopping carts,
Oh, yeah.
but it will smell so bad, like,
No,
yeah.
the other thing to remember too is if we don't get the grant from the healthcare authority, that doesn't mean we're not getting a DCR. It just means we have to figure out another way.
Right.
So, anyway, on the locker issue, do we want to amend that to say lockers are supported only at the mitigation site or just as a standalone ID?
I would think that.
All right, so lockers co-located with a mitigation site.
And that's what we already have, so.
Okay, rapid rehousing.
Yeah, are you mainly the source for record rehousing? Yes. I know Susan has some dollars too. We have a grant coming down the pipe for prevention. So I'm not really pushing too hard on the prevention side of that. Rapid rehousing, we always need more dollars for.
But I guess my question is, aren't we doing this pretty well already?
We are, but we are gonna lose a lot of funding as the COVID money goes away, like a lot. We ran, the first year I started, we put people in houses at the tune of 231,000. Last year we did 6.3 million, and that money's going away, a lot of it. So,
How many off-site shelter houses did you do with ESGCB?
3 off-site shelter houses, which took our shelter bed from 75 individuals served to 207 individuals served. But that one's also ending in September as well. So,
Because we had 2 ESGCB houses also.
it cost me about $120,000 a year to do the 3 off-site shelters.
So would this be something similar to what we were talking about with the support for the current shelter options, that we just recommend to council that we support, like write letters of support for your granting efforts and that kind of thing?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be like community services, I mean, through the Housing Health Advisory Board, they've got 2163, 2160 monies, and
We're gonna have to find so much more. We've proven such a huge need in the community that it's.
recording fees,
Yeah.
and all that's really being used for,
That's one of the benefits, I
Do
think.
we have any idea of the data? Just, I keep wanting to push data just because then
Oh, yeah,
it'll
I'll
show
show
what our
Yeah.
successes have been. How much is the need? Do you have any idea?
That
Do you
was-
even have any idea what the need is for every house?
Yeah, so, I always keep going back the year I started, so the grant term would have been July 2019 to June 2020. We funded 114 households. Last grant term, we funded 967 households.
Because of the ESGCB monies, is that with the eviction in there too?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was all part of the damages and the extra.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna talk about that tonight.
Kind of scary, the need.
But that's good though, because people need it.
And I'm finding developers that want to buy like and remodel homes here.
Yeah.
But what I've been doing is I've been selling like the rapid rehousing or the prevention program and master leasing. So that means you lease it to me and then I sublet, not really, you're a program participant, so I can guard the house really well. So people are coming to me to want to buy these homes and have me do this, but the money's dwindling, so it's kind of in this weird like nerve-wracking point where we need this, we want this, but
Right.
the dollars are gonna run out.
And were you planning on sharing those numbers? Tonight?
Sure.
Okay. Good.
Look, you have your presentation already ready.
So with that, is that something that the group support for the rapid rehousing efforts at Crossroads? Is that something that the group would recommend?
yes.
So basically, you're gonna help support grant writing efforts on Crossroads' behalf, that's what I'm hearing?
letters.
Letters of support.
Right,
On anyone who's
so the
like,
city does not absorb a financial obligation.
No,
Right. We would write letters of support for Crossroads, for Youth Connection,
for anybody who's providing those
Yeah,
services.
no, it doesn't have to be Crossroads, obviously, the entities, the,
nonprofit entities.
yeah,
that
that,
do
I just call you all the
housing support.
entities, and it's all of you.
It's all right.
Yeah,
Is there- Who's comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with rallying support behind the entities, for sure.
3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 12,
And just so you know, those letters of support are like, so we just, I know that Community Lifeline also, but we applied for the unsheltered set aside and rural set aside funding, and we got awarded both of them. And so, and it's because I had some letters of support and I had funding that's been established that shows, wow, your community's really wrapping around you. And then I've spoken to someone who was on the review board, and she said one of the main reasons we were approved is because we had that backing by the community.
So downtown public restrooms, in the memo in here, we talked a little bit about, or I talked a little bit about what that means as far as timing. So closed in the evening, just like the ones at Neyland Park. And there would be a little bit of additional cost for our public works staff, our park staff, to check on those a couple times a day and clean them up when necessary.
So I have used these ones in Portland, and over in Europe, they're all over the place.
The Portland group, yeah.
Yep, and in Europe, they're like on every third block, and I've never seen a clean, I mean, you'd think London would be really nasty, but because they have these, and they just go in and they're designed that you just go in and spray them.
Yeah, it's all
And
stainless steel.
it's pretty amazing.
Aren't the ones in downtown Olympia around the lake that are wet rooms? They call them because they spray them, keep them wet so people don't lay down in them and that's, you don't.
Yeah.
I'd only have one thing about the restrooms, and that would be that they're not completely enclosed where you could see people's feet in there. That way that would decrease like, you know, rape, or if somebody overdosed in there, anything like that, being able to see your feet, at least on the bottom, a little
I think that they are designed that,
Are they?
that I'm thinking
Yeah.
of, I think they are
bit. That
designed.
way, and they're
That's like
wet,
a-
so that way people, if they're on the ground, you know something's
That's a
going
good
down.
idea.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I
the other
think
part
that-
too is you either have green or blue lights inside, so
Yeah.
people can't find their
Veins.
veins.
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, they do that. They're pretty cool.
Isn't that part of the vision plan, like the 2015 vision plan that's still kind of happening? Isn't there a public restroom in the clock tower-ish area?
Yeah, and I'm not saying, this is an idea that you guys had, I put it down, all I'm saying is it'll be closed from dusk to dawn.
Yeah, I like
It
that.
has to be locked.
So it'd just be like Neyland Park or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So the prices that I had in here, the Portland, that's the one that Jim was talking about, it's all stainless steel, you go down, you basically, it doesn't take much upkeep, and you plop it on the site with your stubs for everything, everything's already hooked up, it's all self-contained.
So I
But
guess,
it is $250,000 at minimum
For one?
for one.
so I guess my question, I mean, I think we need downtown restrooms,
Mhm.
we just need them. But from a chronically homeless standpoint, if we're recommending an encampment that is outside of the city, is,
Is the need there?
well, I think the need's there, I just think it probably needs to be longer term. I know you're putting it into that, but just a thought about that.
Sure. Well, and you all know, not part of this recommendation, but you all know that we're working with the United States Postal Service to swap properties, Brewer Park, for what is known as Post Office Park, even though it's federal property. And once that happens, we'll have land downtown to be able to do that. My concern is that most of the complaints I see are things that happen overnight.
Yeah.
And if the restrooms aren't gonna be open at night,
It's not gonna solve that problem.
how much is it gonna solve? Right.
Right.
You know,
So-
we've always wanted bathrooms downtown for other reasons, but I'm not sure this is.
Sure, yeah, that's a long-
I'm not
Yeah, I
sure
don't
if this
think
is,
it
this is,
fixes
this is gonna
anything on
fix
the
this.
homeless level. I think it's more of just a town need.
I mean, the porta potties got left at the farmer's market for a weekend and they were destroyed.
Right.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
broke
they
a
were
lot of
graffiti, they were broken, there was blood, I mean.
Well, that's, the city does, or the city had a program before I got here, and it was 2017 or 2018, for porta potties downtown, and the company that provided that service, or the city's vendor, refused to provide the service anymore, because their products were being destroyed. So, is it fair to say that this one should not go on the
At
recommendation
this
list?
time,
Yeah, I don't
For
think it's
this
related
purpose.
to, I mean, it might help it some because you're not gonna get the bushes in the clock tower. Obviously, we all know what happens there.
Mhm.
But I don't think the two help each other enough to spend $250,000.
Okay. Anybody want to make a recommendation or put a number down for that one?
I'm still in support of it.
Me
Okay.
too.
I'm sorry. I'm still in support of it because even, people have to go poop somewhere. People have to go pee somewhere. I watched a young man get off the bus because we weren't open and I couldn't catch him, run down the alley to go pee.
Well, yeah, just go to the clock tower, they use the bathroom.
But I'm just saying
You'll see them
that-
standing in the bushes.
But, and that's what I'm trying to say, even during the day, they go to the bathroom. So, and because business owners aren't gonna let them in their building, and I don't blame you, don't hear me say that. We struggle with letting some people, older people come in when they say, can I just use your restroom? So, I don't, and you're understaffed, so we can't say go to Community Lifeline and go to the
So
bathroom.
transit's not open?
They have locks on there, and I think
Safeway
there's.
lets them use it too.
I mean,
that's what
I
I
would
was gonna
support
say for safety.
temporary
Yeah.
potties if we can find a
And then-
vendor to bring them, but having built in a bathroom down there at this time, I think it's a bad idea.
And Meelan Park's open during the day too, right?
Yes.
And it gets trashed too.
The irrigation side is obviously gonna be.
That's,
Yeah, that's a given.
okay.
So what do we have for votes for the
Three,
public
I
restrooms?
got 3 so far. Any more?
I'm all about supporting the vision plan, but just to tie it to
But
this,
not for,
yeah, I just don't see it as part of.
It's just not a $250,000,
Right,
is what you're saying.
okay. Okay.
Could we look at finding another vendor for maybe a couple porta potties?
Yeah.
And that might
House
solve,
Brothers just bought Olympic porta potty, so they're probably looking for,
and be honest
that
with them
means
and let them
anything.
know it's a daily clean kind of thing, or, you know, instead of once a week or
officially public
times a week.
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's official. I got the new truck showed up to clean our toilets.
Yeah, I got the new invoice.
So, the public dashboards, that we could put as part of our, new website, to show, you know, beds available, that type of thing. Our officers now call daily, to find out how many beds are available each day, at Community Lifeline.
We have a 24-hour line, and I will say that it is not utilized the way it really should be.
Right.
For being the lead that's supposed to be doing the intakes in this community, we are not capturing the intakes in partnership like we should.
And that's part of it, if we had a widget on our website,
Yeah.
you know, that shows, what services each of the nonprofit, groups are providing. How many beds are available each morning, you know, and it's real time. We're doing the same thing with our water meters, it's just a different function, right? Showing real time and showing how many people that are currently in services, is that something that is worth, expending, dollars to provide that information in real time to the public?
Absolutely.
I think the information should be available, but I'll say like even with the communities, if we have open beds, that doesn't mean that I can just put people in, I have to go through Tanya to get people in. So I
Right.
feel sometimes that the public will go, well, why aren't you just putting people in the housing? We can't do that without going through coordinated entry, so
Yeah, very
it's out of our hands as far as that's.
Well, that would just be an explanation piece on there, and people would just have to understand that that's, you know, if anybody comes to me and asks, then that's what I would tell them. Same with Tanya, same with, you know,
Sometimes they
anybody.
get excited and react and don't have all the information.
Right.
You know what I mean, like me?
No, I didn't say that.
Say what it's called, but what is the thing that the hospital uses? The dashboard for all the hospital beds?
Oh, watch track.
Yeah, the WA track. I talked a lot with that guy after, so it like documents all bed availability for the state, for hospital beds. And I kind of went down a rabbit hole with him and was like, well, can we like make our own dashboard for like
Right.
assessment availability, housing availability, and all of that? And he was like, well, yeah, if your county wants to, and that's free. That doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, some of them, I think the ones I reviewed in here were Snohomish County, and a couple of cities within Snohomish County, they have that same thing. So
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah, it's a
reinventing.
statewide program,
Yeah.
watch track, so
Yeah,
the whole state uses it for hospitals.
Are we already doing that on HMIS?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But if we take that information and put it on a dashboard on our website,
For me personally, I think putting the data out there in terms of how many homeless people we have, what programs we offer is definitely amazing and beneficial, but I worry a bit because I get attempted frauds a lot, that if I put out in the world that I have X amount of dollars for rapid rehousing, I'm gonna get
Well,
a lot of
and whether
inquiries
we,
in a weird way.
yeah, whether we just talk about the money or just about the beds, I mean, that's.
Just the services and beds available could be useful and leave part of that data off of
But if
it.
it's the services, that would include the dollars too, right? I don't, you know, but we'd have to, and if this is a recommendation that the group wants to make, I can work with coordinated entry with Tanya and make sure that we only share information that they are comfortable sharing.
Yeah, and at the least, using it as a tool to communicate to the citizens what our efforts are doing and that we're serving people, at least at that level.
Okay.
I think it's valuable.
So what financial cost to you is that then? I mean, if you're able to use James and theirs and stuff, it's just a minimal,
It's just some of Mary's time, she's
a
fine.
little bit of admin time?
Hi there.
She's already getting paid.
45,000 a year is what it says, 5,000 initial, 45,000 per year for a half-time
For the dashboard?
for the dashboard, that's what we wrote on here.
Yeah.
On
Well,
law tracks,
yeah.
we have a couple organizations that
that's
don't want to report out, like the exact number of beds, and it will just say like call for availability.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, and the $45,000 a year is for all of the dashboards that the county that I looked at used. So they used metrics for recommendation, monthly updates on the number of people in the community experiencing homelessness. So you're not just doing a point in time count, you're doing a point in time count every other week, right? That's where the costs would come in. If we just want to put the number of beds available in the community on our dashboard and keep that up every day, that's not gonna be $45 a year. It's all if we were doing all the same things that these places do, the links are in there.
Well, the law track is updated by providers, not by like one entity. And they said too for that, I'm not as familiar with it, I was just intrigued. But we could all communicate with each other, so if we have like Youth Connection and Community Lifeline and Crossroads, and then law enforcement encounters somebody, they could all have a group chat going on, like, hey, I got this person who needs to be housed, and it will go to all of us, and we could do a group chat, instead of even having to make a phone call.
Is that
I thought that was pretty
is that what HMIS does?
No, because not everybody can see everything in HMIS.
Okay.
You have to be,
law track either.
yeah, you gotta be granted privileges and such, and I mean, we meet weekly with the providers.
It's not real great, it's not super
So
user
this-
friendly.
It's not.
So this, if I was thinking about it, who doesn't know a whole lot about it, it would be like HMIS, but more public facing.
HMIS health for you.
Yeah. I think, is there any way to, just a suggestion, I mean, you're gonna put this information out there, but you could even say something to the effect, if you wanna see a change, you wanna see this increase and be more, here's the websites where you can donate.
Yep.
So that people then, if they're outraged by what they're seeing, they also have a means by which they can help make that better. I think it's important that they continue to fund us so that
The
they
call
can
to
reduce
action.
those numbers.
And Public Health does a good job at putting the different service providers and what they do on their website and how to connect with them. I think putting that on there on the city side also shows a form of unity, and then adding in some data points in there to
Okay.
row the boat
So-
together.
Yeah,
Hey Jeff, did you say that are you redoing the City of Shelton website right now?
we are.
Oh, okay, we are in the process of redoing our website, so maybe we need to connect and make sure we have the same information.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Look at that working together.
That
Yeah.
unified stuff.
We're going the same way, did I just catch that?
Yeah.
I caught it.
We had delayed our new website because we were working on rebranding for the city, but that didn't work out, so it's kind of a hiccup. But now we're going for a new look. Easier to navigate, that kind of thing. Anyway, off track. How many people would feel comfortable recommending something like what we talked about here?
The information being
Yeah.
shared a little better?
As part of the recommendations, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. Two more to go. Housing first is a concept.
What?
We're already,
We're already doing that.
it's already how the grants are supposed to run, so.
We don't have a choice in it.
Well, and this goes beyond, remember when we were talking about the mitigation site, the
Yeah.
emergency type of thing. If you don't have a step where people go to next, all that emergency encampment or mitigation site is gonna do as well, right? So, with the housing first concept, and even with the next one, I mean, we can take the last two together, is housing first and affordable housing. Support for that affordable workforce housing component, moving forward with city-owned property. There are multiple different ways to do this and finance it. It's just a matter of finding a developer that wants to invest. Invest in our community and they can see a return. So.
And it's important too that they don't use their tax credits to then, or to use some means to say, we want to support 30% AMI and lower, and then when it actually comes time to build it, they don't do that. They pay the fine and then they build it.
That's what the developer agreement's for.
Yeah, and the vouchers too, that they accept the vouchers, so that's critical too.
Well, and on top of that, and Tanya, I know you can help me with this, the fair market value rent for Mason County is so skewed and so bad.
Because we don't
that-
have enough units, yeah.
Well, it's based on what they say the
It's
cost
it's
of.
10-year data.
Yes.
So HUD uses literal 10-year data
Yeah.
and then project it out, and so it's
So,
garbage.
And they do what, 4% a year maybe?
yeah, and the
Maybe.
only way you can change that is to actually hire someone to come in and do an assessment of the, yes.
No, go, I don't know.
But to come in and do an assessment and they turn it in and then they'll officially change it in
Right.
HUD.
Yeah.
And so this affordable housing, all of these next ones, I mean, it's not, we can work our asses off.
I've done 3 community studies and 6.
Yeah, but they have to be done,
They have to be done by somebody.
They have to
They
be
told
done.
me how to do it, and I'm like, oh, God.
yeah, anyway, I'm just telling you, I've been reading about it. Kitsap County had it done and they had all their FMRs raised. And they paid someone to do it. I can give you the lady's name who told me all about it. And when they paid that person to come in, because it had to be an unbiased person, came and did the study and they raised their FMRs.
This shouldn't be news to anybody here, but working with the feds sucks,
Yes.
okay? Yeah.
No way, do tell. Have we done a feasibility study?
And this is on camera, so you know I'm not lying.
But I think that if we're gonna recommend this, I think we have to really look at that as a option, because I know my hands are tied.
Right.
I mean, I have money to put people in houses, but they can't afford them and sustain them. I mean, we can get them in, we pay for 3 to 4 months to help them out. The idea is they're supposed to be sustainable. They're working a job full-time and they're paying 30, they have less than 30% of their income after they pay their rent and utilities.
And that's exactly flipped from what it should be.
Exactly.
Education too is key, because you already tried to do an affordable housing in this town and we're told no. So if you don't start doing public education about what that means, who will be there far in advance of it, it's gonna get shut down again.
Any level of housing though would free up affordable housing, because people will graduate forward, they'll move out of their shitty mobile into something a little nicer, then that frees up the shitty mobile for something. So I mean, any level of development is a step in the right direction.
But when that shitty mobile costs $1,500,
It wouldn't
But
though,
that's-
it wouldn't though, because
Later on it
the
won't,
new
once
one
the
was
market
gonna be
changes.
850 or 1,000, you know, and so it wouldn't be, landlords would either have to start bringing down their rents to stabilize them to match
Seeing the
the
rents are
affordable
low.
housing, or not rent them at all.
But affordable housing is a triggering word, just like.
No, I understand, workforce housing's a terrible one too, because I don't want it moved in next to me, but that's, you know,
So we
so,
gotta just
like
get ahead.
Melanie said in the beginning, branding is
It's-
everything,
Well,
was
it's the
this stuff
second
unrolls.
concept with the mitigation side, right? Like we talked about earlier. We can all say this is a great idea, so you pick a place for it, the knives are coming out.
I feel like Melissa's been trying to say something, you boys are loud.
go
Yeah.
for it.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to point out, so we've done a housing needs, well, we haven't done a housing needs assessment, but the county paid the FCS group, I don't know how much money it was,
Yep.
to do a housing needs assessment, but I think that one of the problems with it is because the data is so old.
Yep.
However, I'm gonna shamelessly plug, we've scheduled a special presentation, for the Housing and Behavioral Health Advisory Board. I believe most everybody in this room has been invited, and if you weren't, let me know what your email is, I'm happy to invite you to it. But the FCS group is going to present the findings of that data, and the purpose of it is to help kind of inform what is our capability, what is our infrastructure like for us to actually pursue affordable housing projects find out who the developers are who are willing to take on projects like that. This kind of feedback is gonna be really helpful. I think they've already presented to the Board of Health, the County Board of Health, Mason County Board of Health, and a lot of the feedback was, the data's old, we need you to update it. So I wanna make sure that everybody has it on their radar. I sent out the invites to individuals about a week ago. And the meeting is on Thursday, November 10th, I believe it's at 9 a.m., 10 a.m.? 9.
So I think we absolutely need to have housing, affordable housing all on that list. And,
Like I said, you guys
Just-
tell me what,
yes,
I'll figure out how.
yes.
I don't think we need to stress about the housing first component, and the reason why I say this is not because I don't think it's something we should be doing, it's that it's already wired into all of our grants.
Okay.
So I don't think you necessarily have to push that at the city council's recommendation, because all the money we gather is gonna push that, because that's, Washington State pushes that so hard. But yes, absolutely, team housing in general, all the housing.
All the housing.
Well, this isn't in person or on?
It's on Zoom.
Okay.
It'll be on Zoom. So I'll send reminders out too if you've already gotten it.
If you wanna send it to me, I have everybody's email address.
Sure,
I'll
okay.
just send it out. So I'll send that out again, happy to. So we can, we'll say that it is, affordable housing is a recommendation that this group wants to make to city council. Housing first, not necessarily.
Yeah, you can just eliminate that, because it's it's hardwired,
Yeah, it's hardwired for all of us.
Jamie?
I know it's like beating a dead horse, but I'm gonna keep saying it over and over and over again. I know we got some housing out there for families and we're getting housing for veterans, but we still, in our state, do not have housing for anybody that has mental health.
Right.
So if that was something that I could keep advocating for, it's gonna be some sort of transitional housing specific to our mental health population. Because when they get out of treatment, they're doing well, and then they get released right back to the road, and then they start doing terrible again.
They start stopping.
I think it would be easier to write those grants and get that done in our community if we had a DCR, and if we were partnered with, say, VHR or one of these other agencies, that you have to partner with somebody.
Right.
And VHR has mental health housing in Thurston County. So I think that would be a good partnership for to move forward, but we just don't have the mental health care like we should.
Right.
And then add in when the Thurston County puts the don't cross with the ambulance.
Put your hands up for affordable housing. Okay.
There's a great story from the Seattle Times, let me see when it was, how big changes in Washington Western State Hospital fit into Governor Inslee's plan to reimagine mental health. You guys should read that. It's from March 26, 2022. It's very interesting.
Can you send that out? Or send it to
Where
Jeff?
Yeah, I sent it to Jeff. Jeff could probably,
Is that the one about the DCR taking 12 days to come out?
what's that?
Is that the one about the DCR taking 12 days to
No,
come out?
it's just a story about the whole system. And the beds, and their plan is to increase beds to 500 between 2027 and 2029, but not for what we need them for.
Yeah, I'll
For,
send it.
Second Wednesday.
yeah.
Have you ever been to Western State?
Huh?
Have you ever been to Western State?
Not the
I've
one.
seen lots of patients in Western State. Our street stuff is nothing compared to that.
So
been to the old one?
I just want to make sure we're all clear, right, on this. So the recommendations that this group wants to make is DCRs, that one was almost unanimous. Storage lockers co-located with the mitigation site, right? Support for the rapid rehousing, and then support for our community partners and nonprofits for those dollars. Affordable housing, and support for the current shelter. So that's what, 5? I just want to make sure everybody's clear on this, so I don't forget.
So the mitigation site doesn't make the cut?
Oh, sorry, the mitigation site, right.
Okay, can I add a caveat to the mitigation site?
Yeah.
I'm really nervous about cars and campers.
Yep.
I think we opened the door for campers, and I think everybody is gonna move off Olympia Parkway and come screaming here for hookups.
They're doing another suite now.
Yeah, I know, but
Have
as
you
soon as they
driven
get pushed along though, and they go, Shelton's got RV sites, and then
buddy, we're gonna get them.
Isn't that more safe parking than a mitigation site?
Yes, but they usually, the same codes in the cities that I looked at, apply to them. So if we wanted to, if we wanted to exclude that or put it somewhere else, we'd have to write it that way.
If we
See,
had
and on
safe
that note
parking
there, can't we
sign-
make it really sexy for like a, and I'm just gonna say KOA, a KOA style, somebody to come in and put in their own, so the city doesn't have to own it, and they can do a $20 a night or something that's affordable, and then the entities can work out a grantee payment way to keep them,
Somewhere, yeah.
something like that, and I just don't have the vocabulary for y'all, but am I way off base with my thoughts?
Just, no, I know it's kind of late in the game and we're trying to wrap it up, but Athena, you talked about the pallet shelters. Is there a way we could do kind of like a hybrid of the mitigation that maybe Lifeline and mitigations can't at the same place being run by that?
Yeah, let me talk real quick about what I think the recommendations are. At first, wherever it's located, it's going to be a place for people to take their tents, and that's it. They'll have a couple porta potties, they'll have fresh water, and that kind of thing, right? Over time, that same site will turn into something like Quixote Communities. And we will work with our partners to operate that site. But this is getting it on the ground, getting it started, and then moving it up to what it'll eventually become, which is that pallet shelter type of site. That's kind of how I see it working.
That's literally how we started, and for 7
Right.
years, 6 churches, every 90 days, every 90 days, had to change the location of those tents, and there was about 35 tent locations that kept moving. And they had a central site they built on every single one of those that was a place where they could get fed. They had showers, they had restrooms, and they were self-regulated. They had to have someone on site 24/7, and the church people stepped up and did that for 7 years.
Yep.
So,
But yeah, according to our ordinance for those, the one the council passed in August for those temporary homeless encampments, you have to have a community organization as a host. It can't be on somebody's private property. You have to have a host on the site, you have to have the police department check the warrants, that kind of stuff. We have to follow our own law, we can't make it up as we go along. But I envision that that site will eventually turn into something like that. So if you guys talk amongst yourselves, I've had too much coffee, I'll be right back.
And I responded and said, I can't, because it was during this today. And then, no response, no response, no response, and then I got a cancel, and I was like,
I know, I did too. I was like, huh, I wonder if they passed.
So is there, now that we've got the recommendations down, I'm gonna put them in just kind of a one pager, so we won't have any background material as part of this. And I'll have it available to hand out tonight, to everybody.
they're gonna be bodyguards and escorts out to our cars after the meeting.
I'll be here, don't worry.
Just out of curiosity.
You got it. Yeah, so we'll have that, we'll start at 6, I hope you all come, I hope you're all able to attend. I wanna thank you as part of that group too, or you, I guess, either one. But tonight will be interesting, and I'm glad we get to share the recommendations to the community.
We have table space to put some stuff out if we have flyers.
Yeah, so the tables, the way we have the tables set up, I wanted to make it easy to find different groups. So the table that's set up right outside these doors is for our nonprofit groups. It'll be there. City council will be back here, back in the corner, and then the city staff will be over on the other side next to the windows.
Are we sharing tables?
Yeah.
I don't share one.
Too bad, sucker.
Yeah. But there should be enough room for all of you, and there's enough room if you want to have handouts so you can put stuff down on the table. There's also chairs there, but
Should bring our own table.
we probably won't be sitting too much, I wouldn't imagine.
So when are these recommendations gonna be made to the council?
So after tonight, we're still going to take feedback from the public, because that's kind of what this is all about,
Yeah.
these recommendations. And then they will go to council in a study session in November.
Okay.
And I will definitely let all of you know what that exact date is, because I'd love for you to attend that as well. Okay?
I asked about the study session, because they're allowed to ask questions in a study session. That would be
Well,
good.
and that's, yeah, I want you guys there. I may even have one of you present to me.
Got
That's a great
So
idea.
council can ask questions, but anybody watching it,
During a study
Not a
session,
study
it's a little
session.
different, it's a back and forth during
Yeah.
study session, isn't it?
With council.
During the study
When you do a
session,
city
it's-
council meeting, which is what you normally do, they're not allowed to respond to you.
So council can't, well, I shouldn't say can't, council shouldn't answer questions during the public comment, and neither should staff. That's the time for the council to take information in. But after that, I always write all the questions down. I always get back to the people that ask questions and answer those if I'm able to. Yeah. Usually the next day, sometimes not, but within a couple days. But I've recommended to council that they do not respond to any public comment, because I've seen that go very poorly and nothing but contempt.
Will there be a reminder to people that when they're speaking this evening to be civil and respectful of people? Because there's been some issues with that at the city council meeting, and I'm just concerned.
I agree with that. I will ask that everybody, this is for civil discourse, and you'll be asked to leave if you can't follow the format. And it's not a city council meeting, so.
I feel like it's gonna be a little different because it's not a city council meeting, and I think it's a good opportunity, because when I hear a lot of these people come into the podium in city council, it just kind of, to me, seems like a general lack of knowledge. They're
Yes.
speaking without all the points, and I agree, it was pretty rough, the last one I watched with Jamie and Colleen being a bit attacked, and that one and Dina, so I think this will be good for everybody.
Well,
Jamie held her own.
yeah. And I've been yelled at, I've been getting yelled at all morning because I'm not providing opportunities for people to ask questions from the audience to everybody on stage. I don't think that that's the right way to do that, because when you have conversations with somebody face to face, it's a lot different. And you can ask follow-up questions, you can actually get the information that you're looking for, rather than somebody up on stage. You have a conversation with people, that's what it is, right? We're not the government, we're people, that's all. People try
But you're viewed as the government.
Right, which is why I want to have conversations and not just talk to somebody from behind a podium. I want to talk to people.
I think it's a good opportunity to allow everyone to be able to speak as well, because if
Yes.
you've got one or two people who just get bombarded with questions as they're up at the podium, and then you take away from other people's time,
That's right.
then it's not fair.
Yeah. So, and we'll all be here until 8. The tap comes on at 8:01.
He's gonna lock us in.
After you put all the chairs away.
I'm gonna call
Perfect.
Stevie. I'll call my husband, he can come and help.
Anything else?
Jeff, can you send out that article I sent you?
Yes.
I don't have everybody's email.
I will. And I'll send out the invite to the housing needs study too. Anything else? I really appreciate all of you folks taking the time to do this. And I appreciate what you're going to do tonight.
And that Susan is sharing a table.
Yeah.